There are only 3 big changes coming to this year's iPhone lineup, and you don't need to watch a 3-year Apple event to know what those changes are. Besides, they kept the most interesting bits for the end of the event anyway. So let's summarize those 3 big changes. First of all, finally, an always on display is available on an iPhone now. Second, there is finally a 48 megapixel camera. Yes, iPhones are no longer a 12 megapixel cameras. There is finally a 48 megapixel camera with a catch. And third, there is something called dynamic islands. I know, stupid name. This is basically Apple's way of managing the notch. Basically, way cooler than any other smartphone on the market is doing, albeit the stupid name. Bear with me, I'll explain what it is just in a second. But first things first, the biggest disappointment. All of these big changes are only coming to iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max. So, sorry about the iPhone 14 and 14 Plus. The only big changes that are coming to iPhone 14 and 14 Plus are the iPhone 14 Plus and the satellite connectivity. Literally, those are the only 2 noteworthy things from the entire Apple event for the 14 and 14 Plus lineup. iPhone 14 Plus is just a bigger iPhone with the exact same specs as iPhone 14. So previously, if you wanted to buy a bigger iPhone with a bigger screen, your only options were the Pro Max versions, iPhone 12 Pro Max or 13 Pro Max, but those cost a lot of money. So if you just wanted a bigger iPhone but don't necessarily want to pay a hell lot of money for it and don't necessarily need the super 6x 8x zoom camera, by the way, who's taking pictures with like that much amount of zoom? So if you just wanted a bigger screen, iPhone 14 Plus would be the option for you. Personally, for me, I'm still undecided between small size versus big size, because now that I've been using a smaller size iPhone for a while, I do find the convenience quite comfortable, you know. I'm able to use it in my hand. Sometimes I use one-handed. I can keep it in my pockets. I don't need to carry my purse all the time just to put my iPhone in it. So I like the phones that fit in my pants. But if you do like the bigger screen, then yes, iPhone 14 Plus is a cheaper option, which has same specs as iPhone 14 and comes with a bigger 6.7-inch screens. Both iPhone 14 and 14 Plus come with the same, sadly, A15 Bionic chip, which is not a bad chip by any standard. If something ain't broken, don't fix it kind of philosophy does work here. It's the same chip as last year's lineup from iPhone 13. iPhone 14 and 14 Plus in one line are same as iPhone 13 and 13 Pro Max size-wise, just with a slightly better camera. I doubt that this much camera improvement will be noticeable on some devices. I'll have to see the side-by-side camera comparison, picture comparison. I cannot at this point say if these pictures will look better in any possible way to the human eye or if the improvement is just in terms of numbers, but they do come with a slightly better camera. So if you wanted to decide between getting 13 Pro Max for the big size versus 14 Plus, I would go with a 14 Plus just to get a bigger screen size. But here's a big change that is coming to all iPhone models, the baseline 14 and 14 Plus as well as the Pro and Pro Max versions, and it is satellite connectivity. If you've been living in Canada this year, you may have faced the Rogers Canada-wide outage where cell phone services were not available Canada-wide. People could not even call 911 for emergency services, and those type of situations will use this function of iPhone now that they call satellite connectivity. So satellite connectivity basically does not rely on cell phone towers, instead connects you directly to a satellite orbiting around the Earth. This type of connectivity cannot be established indoors, and even outdoors it needs special massive kind of antennas to connect to those satellites, and your data rates will be very, very low, limited to a few kilobytes only. Apple has managed to integrate this type of antennas into the iPhone design and also created a GUI which lets you point your phone towards a satellite. So if you're outdoors, it will tell you which direction to point your phone at to connect to a satellite if you're in an area where you don't have cell service and you need emergency help. This feature, I hope nobody has to use it, but I do find the utility in it, considering that just this year we did have a Canada-wide cell phone outage due to Rogers network and people were not able to call 911. So this type of service will be very useful in these situations. And now to the Pro models. And I'm gonna start with the most exciting feature first, which they kept for the last in the event, the dynamic islands. I find the name to be extremely bizarre, stupid, funny, does not make any sense, but the feature itself is something I am excited about. Dynamic islands is basically an integration of hardware and software in a seamless way, and it's Apple's answer to the notch. Apple has been mocked by Samsung and other companies for a couple of years now for the massive notch designs, and they may have finally found an answer to that. So I'm not gonna use this word dynamic island again because it definitely does not make any sense. So the notch right now is interactive. You can click on some notifications. When you get a call, it actually pops up a small notification just around the notch area instead of taking up your whole screen. So you still stay in the app. If you want to cancel the call, you can just press cancel and it will hang up the call without you leaving the app and coming back to that screen. Same goes for music. If you're playing some music, it will leave a tiny pop-up sort of notification around the notch area so you can keep an eye on your music, switch to the music app, go forward and back on the music that you're listening to. This notch area can also be used to set some timers. So if you have a timer, the backwards counting will be available on this notch area. If you have multiple apps, if you have music and timer at the same time, then this notch will give you a cool creative animation and basically just split into two in a very seamless way, and it looks very, very cool, and this is something I'm very excited about. It does look very, very useful. Same goes for the Face ID. Instead of Face ID taking an overlay over your entire screen sort of, now it will just use a tiny animation around the notch area to unlock your phone. The notch can also be used to keep an eye on some game scores, hopefully Uber deliveries, because one of the most annoying notifications on iPhone so far for me has been Uber Eats. They give you a gazillion notifications not necessarily related to your ride progress. So this is something that I was very excited about with the new iOS version, when they showed that you can keep on your lock screen, keep an eye on your Uber deliveries without having to get a gazillion notifications around it opening just to find that it's just another ad that Uber Eats is trying to put your way. If Uber Eats integrates with this notch design, that will be something very, very useful. And finally, an always-on display is coming to iPhone, at least to the Pro and Pro Max versions. That's much better than any always-on display I have personally ever used, because even on 1 GHz refresh rate, you still have a bunch of notifications, not in a black and white style, but still in a color resolution. And this always-on display definitely feels much better than any that I have ever used. A couple of years ago, I was using OnePlus 5T, and on OnePlus 5T, the always-on display only gave me the time and some black and white teeny tiny notification text that does not look and feel like a regular mobile phone experience. Whereas on iPhone, this always-on display, although it has been a couple of years late and behind everybody else, but does sort of feel better than everybody else in Apple's own Apple way. Finally, the iPhones are also getting a 48 megapixel camera, so that's a big jump up from the 12 megapixel camera. You can shoot in ProRes, ProRAW. Apple also displayed on screen that they have better dynamic performance, better dynamic range, I'm guessing. They also showed there are some hardware changes in the way flashlight works. Personally, I don't like to shoot with flashlights anyway, but the flash is supposed to be brighter. There are some minor changes in the display, so with 2000 nits brightness outdoors, your iPhones will be a little bit brighter and you will be able to read your screen much better in the sunlight. When it comes to camera, they also introduced something that I am excited about. Optical image stabilization, which they claim to be like gimbal. So far, I have not seen any smartphone on the market that has gimbal-like stabilization built in, and at least in the demo that they showed in the Apple version, which of course will not be comparable to the real-life performance that we get when we use the iPhone, but it did seem quite stable. So for any action shots, for any bike riding shots, any running and skating sort of shots, your iPhone video will finally have some stabilization. I don't believe it will be quite like gimbal, but it will be better than it is on current iPhone models. As for deciding which one should you buy, so if you don't need your iPhone for high-end photography and videography, go for either iPhone 14 or 14 Plus if you want a bigger size. Personally for me, I'm planning to use my iPhone to shoot these YouTube videos, to shoot some other videos outdoors and indoors, to shoot some photos. So photography is a big part of my decision when it comes to buying a phone for me. So I am going to go for either an iPhone Pro or Pro Max. I'm still undecided if I should go for the bigger screen because I got used to a smaller screen and it just feels more convenient for me. As for the colors, I'm very undecided because out of all the colors, I like the white, I like the purple. I'm not quite a fan of the darker colors anymore. Let me know in the comments which one I should go for. So I am ordering mine tonight or tomorrow morning as soon as the pre-orders begin, and I will post a hands-on unboxing first impressions video as soon as I receive my iPhone unit. In the meantime, let me know which one I should order, which one I should buy, and if you're excited to see the hands-on experience on these new notches. See you next time!